Now, as we have precisely predicted in the last year, as soon as Trump became president-elect, the globalists would escalate war with Russia. They would launch a new pandemic hysteria. They would also try to pull the rug out from under the economy. They would then activate the ISIS Al-Qaeda cells that Biden in the last 3 years has resupplied with $80+ billion from the Afghan withdrawal and other funding. Then you saw the overthrow of Syria using Al-Qaeda, actually putting Al-Qaeda in charge of that country. So we know that the Democrats, that whole arm of the deep state, is openly running and controlling these groups. That doesn't mean that the youthful idiots, the Islamists from overseas and that they recruited here domestically, like the attacker on the New Year's revelers in New Orleans yesterday morning at 3 a.m. And now we know that the man that blew himself up in Vegas out front Trump International Hotel was also a bomb specialist from the same military base as the man who attacked and who was ISIS there in New Orleans, and his accomplices that have escaped, and the ongoing manhunt for that. We're about to break down what all this really signifies right now.
We'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event.
The first thing that needs to be said about the New Orleans terror attack using the truck and the accomplices and the state police and the FBI saying that there were other people working with the attacker that tried to plant and detonate bombs, who then again escaped and are believed to have run to Texas, and the ongoing manhunt in Texas and other areas of the country, is that they themselves probably don't even know that they are cutouts of a larger globalist crime syndicate that we know is funding Al-Qaeda and ISIS and that directs their leadership. And of course, this has come out for decades after decades. It goes back to Jimmy Carter, Zbigniew Brzezinski in the late 70s, making a deal with the Mujahideen that then became Al-Qaeda, and then, of course, leading right through until today. And that is a fact. Our government with Israel and Turkey and NATO just turned over, as I said earlier, Syria to Al-Qaeda, and CNN saying, well, the former leader of Al-Qaeda is no longer Al-Qaeda, but he's now the good guy. So when you see these type of things happening, you have to understand that higher up, these people are being organized, funded, and controlled. And you've got all these ISIS and Al-Qaeda leaders on record coming across the border in the last few years, even bragging, you don't know who I am, but you will see now. Like known ISIS, Al-Qaeda leaders from places like Azerbaijan.
By the way, if you are smart enough, you will know who I am. But you are really not smart enough to know who I am. But soon you're going to know who I am. Very easy.
Wow, very easy. The entitlement.
No, believe me, I'm much better than that.
I'm just laying out some of the basic facts right now. Next, I'm going to get into the big picture and who I see behind this and strategically where these moves are going. So there's thousands of data points that go into this, but I'm going to try to just break them all down so that we can put a warning out to the public and a warning out to President Trump, because you can better believe the deep state is heavily involved in these attacks, and more are coming.
Is anybody doing anything?
No, and actually, Al-Qaeda makes a joke out of the fact that they move the money we give to the Taliban to the camps that train the Homeland attackers, right? So it's almost like an insider joke, like, yes, we are forcing America to fund their own attacks. So that is the plan, too, that the money will go back to us and our government. And then that makes Americans also look at our government like it's an inside job.
So recapping. In less than 24 hours, a former Army member who is an Islamist plows his car into a bunch of people in New Orleans at a New Year's revelry outdoors, kills now 15, dozens and dozens others seriously injured. The state police put out their report that At least 3 accomplices were trying to plant bombs. There are manhunts going on in areas of Houston shut down. You have a Tesla truck loaded with gasoline, explosives, and fireworks exploding in front of Trump International Hotel. And it's a former Army ordnance specialist or bomb specialist, munitions specialist, who supposedly blows himself up in the vehicle, or then there's manhunts and they've got standoffs with people on buses and just all this craziness going on. And then you have the backdrop of that with the situation in the Middle East, with the federal government openly backing Al-Qaeda, which is the same thing as ISIS, to take over Syria. All of this with Trump getting into office in just 18 days. Now, big picture, I see this as an ongoing PSYOP destabilization campaign, just like the UAV hysteria, just like the escalation of war and the bombing inside Russia with heavy cruise missiles, ATACMS and Storm Shadows and others. And then we see the Iranian-connected individuals and Pakistan, Al-Qaeda, and ISIS-connected individuals being, quote, busted, trying to kill Trump in the last few months. And we have the feds, still run by the Democrats right now, saying that there are plots to kill Trump and that the Iranians are behind it and that we're going to have to attack Iran so that, again, they can start staging these attacks as a precursor to assassinate Trump with a larger, more professional truck bomb or shoot down his plane with a surface-to-air missile, and then be able to blame Iran and get full war with Iran, who's allied with Russia and China, at the same time taking out Trump. That's what I see front and center in all of this. It's also come out that the ISIS sympathizer that led the attack in New Orleans had been in trouble repeatedly when he was in the Army for radical Islamic affiliations and statements, but nothing was done. Again, continually, the intelligence agencies, the leadership of the U.S. military is protecting these individuals, just like we see the FBI leading these different white supremacist groups that they're trying to get to go out and blow up power stations. This is all part of creating the narrative ahead of a cascade of big events, either before Trump gets in or after he gets in. But right now, I want to look at what they said in the first few hours after the attack in New Orleans, where they brought out the DEI lady who could barely talk with a nose ring to say, this is not terrorism. And then Senator Kennedy pushes her aside and says, look, I already know what's going on. The feds better not lie. You better not try to pull this, because we're not going to put up with it. Because back then they were still trying to cover up the ISIS flag and all the rest of it. But because of Kennedy and the public and others and X and everybody exposing it, they had to quickly stop trying to cover up like they've done with so many of the other Islamicist attacks. Here's part of those crazy exchanges.
We'll be taking over the investigative lead for this event. This is not a terrorist event.
Can I say something, Rick? Tell me who you're with.
WDSU.
WDSU. Okay, and CBS.
The NBC's over here on the right.
Oh, that's an unusual position.
I don't get it.
You wouldn't. Look.
There's a lot of information going around. Some of it is actually true. Some of it isn't. The federal government is now in charge of this investigation. By that I mean the White House, the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice. Here's what I want to ask from the federal government. Catch these people. Catch these people. And then tell the American people the truth. Now, I don't want you...
So what's the moral of the story you just saw? Because Senator Kennedy and the state police in Louisiana wouldn't go along with the cover-up of this being ISIS that they were still trying to push 10 hours after the attack. Then the feds, still run by the whole Obama globalist crime syndicate, had to come out and admit what this really was. Now, yesterday I got contacted by Texas law enforcement who were very concerned about the fact that they knew about other people very closely connected to this individual in the Texas A&M area, and that the feds had not reached out to them, that there were no investigators there, and that no one was going to some of the last known addresses of these individuals. Here's that report. I've got a breaking, exclusive, very important piece of information concerning the ongoing terror attack investigation into the truck attack that killed a bunch of people in New Orleans this morning. We're going to be getting to a Fox News piece in a moment where the state police and others have confirmed that at least 3 other accomplices are reportedly trying to plant bombs and had detonators and have fled the scene. There is now a manhunt going on around the country, particularly in Houston, Texas, where an area has been cordoned off, and the FBI has said don't go into that area. And we have a lot more we'll get to in a moment. But first, the exclusive information. A trusted law enforcement source in Texas reached out to me just about an hour ago and said that there had been an investigation already into this individual and others. And the last known address of one of his family members, his brother, is there in College Station there in Bryan. And that the police chief and others are aware of this and concerned, but so far the feds haven't reached out to them and they don't see any federal activity there. So this is a big deal. At least 3 accomplices running around planting bombs, detonators, all of this. I'll play the little Fox News update on that in a moment. But I already cut reports this morning saying I bet more of this is going to happen. Then you've got the cyber truck, now clearly an explosive blowing up, reportedly with the driver inside, probably detonating it. That's a message to Elon Musk and President Trump as a threat. 19 days till the president gets in. And so we've been predicting that we'd probably see some Islamic terror attacks connected to ISIS and Al-Qaeda here very, very soon. We know the Biden administration has been working with them, giving them weapons. They helped them take over Syria with Turkey and Israel. This is very, very dangerous, but big investigations centered in and around Houston, and so far no investigation going on that we know of from law enforcement, though they're concerned they're in the A&M area. So everybody get this report out because we're going to obviously try to stop further attacks, but everybody needs to be frosty right now.
Detonation, and this is again from a Louisiana State Police bulletin. Also, a corresponding remote control discovered inside the vehicle. Now, this is also significant. And according to the same intelligence bulletin, surveillance footage, Molly, captured 3 men and a woman placing one of multiple improvised explosive devices. So certainly more to this investigation. President Biden, meanwhile, is not here at the White House today on this first day of 2025. He's at the presidential retreat in the Maryland mountains, Camp David. However, he is continuing to get updates from his team, from the Homeland Security Department, from the Justice Department, also from the FBI. I want to read something that the president said. Actually, I want to go to, rather, some sound from President Biden on the tarmac before he took off from Delaware to go to Camp David. Watch this.
I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC, and we're gathering all the, and I spent a lot of time with the government, with the mayor. What was your reaction when you heard what happened? Well, the reaction was one of anger and frustration. Thank you.
He didn't say much there. He said he would say more later, but he did release a statement more thoroughly that says, in part, my heart goes out to the victims and their families who were simply trying to celebrate the holiday. There's no justification for violence of any kind, and we will not tolerate any attack on any of our nation's communities. Meanwhile, the man who's moving into this White House behind me in less than 3 weeks, President-elect Donald Trump, put out a statement on social media earlier today that reads as follows. When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true. The crime rate in our country is at a level that nobody has ever seen before. Our hearts are with all the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. Now, the former president said criminals coming in his statement, meaning into our country, but to be clear, Molly and Brian, the suspect was born in the United States. He served in the United States Army. He was a veteran. The FBI is the lead agency in this investigation, going through the social media and any other accounts associated with the suspect. But that key bulletin right there by the Louisiana State Police, the Associated Press was first to report, shows potentially other people involved. And the FBI was cagey during that news conference as far as saddling in with a specific number of how many other suspects. Governor Jeff Landry, the Republican governor in Louisiana, said they essentially don't want to tip their hat to anybody and tell any other potential suspects or potential accomplices what they know. But President Biden continuing to get updates from afar. He will be back at the White House tomorrow. And of course, it's possible at any time we will hear some more formal statement.
Now, regular viewers and listeners in the last month know that I specifically said, now that we've seen this massive funding and weapons being given to al-Qaeda to take over Syria, I would expect terror attacks in Europe, the UK, the United States, Canada, you name it. And I said, now, it's not logical that Biden would openly back these people and then they would attack us on the surface because Biden will get the blame. But they don't care. That's how stupid they think you are. They openly backed ISIS and al-Qaeda in the last 15 years attacking Syria. So these guys work for the globalists. They're low-level minions. They're just brainwashed cultists of the whole Islamic system. But you have to then understand, ladies and gentlemen, that all the evidence points towards much bigger events coming in the near future. And I believe it's a smokescreen to create the narrative that, this Islamic threat is out there, but not connected to the globalists. So, again, they could try to kill Trump. And Trump's talking about having a big rally on the 19th in D.C. and all the rest of this. And I don't think Trump should be intimidated from still having these events. But I am simply saying that a truck bomb, a nuke, we've been hearing the hype that Iran smuggled a nuke in. All of that's being put out to pre-program the narrative ahead of massive false flags. And that's the real takeaway here that everybody really needs to understand. And we need to get Kash Patel and, other people that are very, very smart to, get out there and start talking about this and dealing with this. We've also seen big whistleblowers come out on some of the biggest podcasts and shows from the CIA the last month saying these ISIS al-Qaeda attacks are coming and that FBI agents and CIA people have been persecuted and gotten in trouble when they expose it and when they talk about it.
Back to the interesting point. You said that you guys think that they've sent at least 15, al-Qaeda alone has sent at least 1,500 people here in the United States.
Correct.
What do they plan on doing with them?
They have a 2025 multi-coordinated, multi-city plot to avenge the death of Osama bin Laden.
Okay, so I've watched you on podcasts. I've never heard that. Could you explain that more?
We're going to put a report on Monday, but essentially al-Qaeda is actually who helped plan the Hamas attacks. The Hamas attacks is a dress rehearsal. So the Hamas attacks is the practice attack, and then the big attack is going to be in the United States and then in 4 countries in Europe.
Okay.
Now, there are a lot of CIA and FBI whistleblowers that have been going public the last few months, but Sarah Adams was very senior at the CIA, a targeting officer, and she's gone public in just the last few weeks warning of imminent ISIS al-Qaeda attacks and that she and others got in trouble for trying to expose it and stop it. Here's part of one of her latest viral interviews.
I just want to clarify. You are 100% certain that there are 1,000 plus al-Qaeda trained fighters within the United States borders?
Well, al-Qaeda says they trained and deployed 1,000 for this attack. First off, I think there's more than 1,000 al-Qaeda members in the United States. But for the Homeland attack, that number is based on what al-Qaeda is saying, so they could exaggerate it. However, they did have about 1,400 in the Hamas attack, so the number is not off from what they did in the first round of attacks.
How old is this information?
I mean, it's ongoing. So the training's already done, right? So all the training info is now old because they trained all the Homeland attackers, if that makes sense. So like next week, you're not going to get info of a Homeland attacker probably at a terrorist camp because it's already done. So all this has been in the last year.
So it's been over a year. It's been a year.
Because this was a continuation, so they planned October 7th first, and then they rolled into planning this after.
Are we next, or is Europe next?
I think the embassy attacks are next, in my opinion.
What are they waiting for the embassies?
I don't think they're waiting. I think it took time to train them. They've now approved them, and they've now moved into the operational stage.
Al-Qaeda, ISIS is all a product of Western intelligence agencies. Saudi Arabia, Israel, NATO, the U.S. government, the UK have been caught thousands of times in the last 30-plus years funding, running, and controlling these groups. And now with 2 of these attacks happening in just one day, it lets us know that this is part of a larger project of destabilization and chaos that the globalists have launched. But the public isn't naive anymore. And with the information that we and others are laying out, we're going to stop their operations dead in their tracks if you get this out to everyone you know, because this is an information war.
Is anybody doing anything?
No, and actually, Al-Qaeda makes a joke out of the fact that they move the money we give to the Taliban to the camps that train the Homeland attackers, right? So it's almost like an insider joke, like, yes, we are forcing America to fund their own attacks. So that is the plan, too, that the money will go back to us and our government. And then that makes Americans also look at our government like it's an inside job.
Bottom line, we're going to see PSYOP after PSYOP after PSYOP. So I would expect to see more of these ISIS/Al-Qaeda attacks. I would also expect to see some type of false flags blamed on right-wingers targeting minorities or migrants. You've seen the pre-programming for that. They can still do another big escalation in the Ukraine war against Russia. They can do a big cyber attack and blame Russia, because all of this has been pre-programmed. But by exposing it and by pointing out who stands to gain and by pointing out that it is the globalist deep state openly running Al-Qaeda and ISIS, that takes a lot of their power away to be able to stage this, because if they get the blame for the attacks and people understand what's happening, they will pull back and not carry these out.